Now, Apple is set to launch its AI-centric phone in September, but losing market share in China, its third largest region for sales. For more of an in-depth look at this, we go to Yahoo Finance's Dan Howley for more. Dan, great to see you. Thanks so much for being on with us. Talk to me about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, this is coming from David Vogt, who's at UBS Global Research, basically saying that, look, the next iPhone cycle, meaning the next iPhone to come out, which is presumably the iPhone 16, isn't expected to be kind of this huge sales super cycle where people go out and trade in their phones en masse for the next version. It's not going to be a repeat, according to Vogt, of what we saw with the 5G phones. That was when phones started to come out with 5G capabilities. People went from 4G to 5G. Frankly, I mean, the difference hasn't really been all that great overall, but still, it was a newer technology, so people went out and purchased new iPhones. And so the thinking would be, okay, well, here comes Apple Intelligence. This is a new reason for people to want to upgrade, but there are some problems here, specifically with Apple's market share loss in China now. Basically, what Vogt says is, look, at the time that 5G was coming out for the iPhone, Huawei was getting kneecapped by the Trump administration around 2019 and a little after, obviously, with the Biden administration as well. And so because of that, Huawei wasn't able to offer the kind of phones that people wanted. People then moved over to iPhone. But now that Huawei's back, they're able to offer comparably impressive devices. And so now they're going back to Huawei. And so it's eating away at some of Apple's market share in the region. And Apple Intelligence might not be the thing that gets people to go back. And so because more people are on with Huawei now, it means that they may not necessarily want to go over to Apple. And so that could, as Vogt say, be a material governor to iPhone unit growth in 2025. Now, there's a few other things to point out here with China and Apple. Obviously, as you said, it's the third largest region by revenue behind the Americas and then Europe. But it also has, obviously, regulatory issues that it's going to have to deal with. How it rolls out Apple Intelligence in the country is going to be a big deal. Part of the pitch of Apple Intelligence was that it's not going to be saving any data when people go to access different AI features. We'll have to see how that works in China, as well as different other features OpenAI's access that people get when it comes to the new version of the iPhone and the next versions of iOS and iPadOS and macOS specifically. So, there's a number of things going on here. But, as far as a super cycle for this next generation of iPhones, at least according to Vogt, it could be problematic. I think one other thing to point out, though, is that numbers of device sales are very hard to gauge just because Apple doesn't provide those exact numbers. It's all based on how the general revenue number comes in for iPhones. That's what Apple now provides. So you're kind of taking a stab at, is it the newest phone? Is it the oldest phone? Is it the high-end version? Is it the mid-range version? So it's all kind of difficult to properly gauge which devices are selling and which aren't.
Dan, really quickly here, I'm curious, what will you look at to indicate that we are at a bottom in terms of the pressure on iPhone sales coming out of China?
Look, I think right now there's some news out of Bloomberg saying that they had done their own run their own numbers and seen that there was a boost in sales, 40% in May and 50% in April, I believe, was what they saw year-over-year increases. That's a result of some of the big sales that Apple's been having in the region. They've been cutting prices. There were holidays going on. They wanted to kind of get those out the door. And so seemingly it's been paying off. I think, for Apple, China is clearly incredibly important, but there's different consumer tastes in China as well. Foldable phones are a big part of the sales over there, and that's why we see companies like Huawei offering foldable phones. Samsung has its own foldable phones. Google has its own foldable phone. Apple, not so much. So, there's a number of different, I think, attributes that Apple could work on there to improve its place. It's not going to roll out a foldable phone until it's absolutely perfect. There's still some things to work out with them, especially as far as durability goes. But I think, when it comes to the bottom that we're seeing, it all just comes down to whether or not we're going to start to see improved growth in the next quarter or two.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for joining us on all things iPhone sales coming out of China. We appreciate it.